Thank you. Okay, we have now begun the recording and we'll call this meeting of the process committee of the CRC to order now. On this, it is what, the 9th of March, 2021, and the meeting it begins at 10:30 and is scheduled to go till noon unless we finish earlier. Okay. All right, everybody, it's good to see all of your faces. Kyle, welcome back. I know you were traveling last time and we missed you so dearly that we said, the hell with it, we're not meeting without Kyle. so here you are. Of course, Bill.
That's unacceptable.
Bill was not there either, and that was something about notification of the meeting, I think, something like that. Anyway, so here we are. The roll call is hereby conducted and completed by me looking at the other four faces here, and everybody's here: Bill Apple, Kyle Davies, Patty Garcia, Liz Lafferty, and myself, Robert O'Connell. Okay, so that part is done. I was remiss regarding the minutes and didn't ask Patty to even, anyway, I sent them to you guys just a little while ago. I don't know whether you saw them, received them, and have them with you, but if you have had a chance to read the minutes, then they're fairly short. Do we have any discussion regarding them? First of all, who has been able to see the minutes? And of course, Patty produced them, so that's everybody but Bill.
Okay.
Yeah. Good enough. Well, is there anybody? I know that technically you're not really supposed to have to approve the minutes and all that business, but does anybody have any additions or changes to the minutes? Sounds like not.
Accepted.
Okay. There's a motion that to be in second. All in favor of any discussion regarding that? No. All in favor, say aye. Or raise your hand. But okay, the minutes have been approved unanimously, and today's agenda, it's the agenda that has been carried over from a week, basically from what was supposed to happen last week. We didn't have that meeting, by the way, and we kind of in lieu of that meeting. Several of us, I think maybe 4 of us, went to the Conversation Cafe that was being held by Community Rights San Juan Islands. And I, for one, enjoyed it. I thought the presenter was knowledgeable and it was of use to us regarding that. I am still, maybe somebody else has seen this. And Liz, I think I sent an email to you about this. But I haven't seen, that I can recall, a hard copy Bill of Rights that has been proposed by that group. And if there is one, I really like to see one. Somebody has, Patty, you look like you're ready to say something about that.
I think Julian Battaglia has given us a sufficient example of what they're talking about. I don't know about the specifics. It was a large group of really great people. And of course, they meet again, at the end of this week. I think we should use what Julianne has provided as a model of what they're talking about, because the group that we attended last week wasn't specific.
Right. Now, I've got copies of 3 different townships, counties, groups in Pennsylvania that came across with charters. And of course, there was the ill-fated Lake Erie charter, which passed with, and that Lake Erie charter, I am originally from the Cleveland, Ohio area, and I used to swim in Lake Erie as a kid. And so I have an interest in how Lake Erie is doing. And apparently there were a lot of discharge from industries along Lake Erie. And when I was a kid, it was direct sewage. But a lot of discharge from industries that was causing a lot of like bacteria and problems with the life in Lake Erie. And I think it was the people of Toledo decided enough already. And then they got this Bill of Rights for Lake Erie, LEBOR, Lake Erie Bill of Rights. And it was passed, and it said the things that you would think that it would say, and it was immediately challenged, and it was struck down. And the groups that were favoring it at the last minute dropped their appeal of that. And so now that's where it stands, that it has been struck down by, I think it was in federal court that it was struck down. And I think it was looked upon as overly broad. And this is a message to us, that it was overly broad. And let's see what the other, and overly vague. And that an important one was that it conflicted with state law. Okay. Now we have to be careful of that, because the state law, as we know, at the way things are set up now, unless we throw a bomb in there and change it, not a literal bomb, the state law is superior to our local law. And that means if the state has taken a position on a certain subject, and it's a laid out position statutorily, that we can't come up with something that is in conflict with that tosses that out, that goes against it. Okay. So what that means, I think, is that if we make an attempt at a Bill of Rights, that we're going to need to have it looked at legally, or may even be appropriate for us to ask the attorney. Now we do have two attorneys on the panel here, at least two. I don't know, maybe more. Yeah, Bill.
Yeah, it's nice to know I'm talking to another Pennsylvanian. I'm a Philly boy from the other corner of the state. And you have to remember that the Pennsylvania Constitution expressly grants those rights, the ability to give those rights. That was taken out of our law here in Washington in 2018 by the Washington Supreme Court. And I don't know if you got a chance to read my lengthy work, but you'll see there's a footnote referring to the case in 2018 that essentially wiped out all constitutional protection for natural assets, all gone. And so what people are trying to do now is to say, well, somehow under the state constitution, counties have that right. I think it's a stretch, and I think it's unnecessary. And I think that if the county tries to create rights in nature, the courts will strike it down. And believe me, there will be a lawsuit. This is San Juan County. And if property rights are involved, there will be litigation. And my position is it's unnecessary. I have a list of the statutes that protect nature. I won't read it to you. It's extremely long. The problem isn't the law, it's enforcement. It's the fact that when you look at even our county department, they're laying people off because of the COVID, the loss of business, the loss of taxes, and people have to be laid off. And so what you've got is a great set of laws. I've got a list of about 11 of them, federal and state, that really nail things down here, but they're not enforced. And they're not enforced because we don't have the money to hire and pay people to do the work. And my concern is we rear back and try to create new law that isn't going to be enforced either, because we don't have the money to enforce it. And it's going to be struck down anyway. What we need, in my opinion, this is my soapbox, is we need somebody to enforce the law. We've got some darn good ones. We're in effect starting over on paper when in reality, we're not doing the job. We do need, I think, an environmental officer of some sort who makes sure things happen. But it's we citizens who have to make sure those are funded. And there are a whole series of problems there. One is that the comprehensive plan is laughed at and ignored. And when they do the budget, they decide where they're going to spend the money. But you heard Mylene say they never look at the comprehensive plan. And yet the law says that they cannot do in the comprehensive plan what is not in the comprehensive plan. The board cannot say, now we're going to build a highway, unless it's in the comprehensive plan, which is a citizens group. This is an area where people are not looking where the wheels are spinning, and we're off 1 foot to the side of the star, working on a whole new universe of law that we don't have the power to create. And we're working hard. It's tough work, what we're doing right now. I want it to be effective, very much to be effective. And I'm really sorry. I'm watching us going off. Whenever I talk to somebody, and I've talked to a number of people in the county, I keep hearing natural rights. Yes, but the only way you create natural rights is to withdraw rights from humans. It is a zero-sum game. And that's why natural rights by themselves are unnecessary. And we're not going to have them until the Constitution is changed. There's a constitutional amendment in the legislature now. It probably won't make it. Kevin and I have talked about it. He says there are too many dubious Democrats. It isn't going to get to the people. So we have to work with what we have, or we're wasting our time.
Comments? Bill, go ahead, Patty.
Well, I know you stated it's a zero-sum game, and yes, I suppose it is, because when you get down to it, if protecting nature requires property rights to be limited, then yes, it's a zero-sum game, and we have been fighting that forever. People have their property, and even though we are only borrowing our property from nature as it is, I feel like I don't really own the land I'm on, but I've been here for 60 some years, but it's still not really mine. People don't think that way, and whatever humans do ends up being harmful in so many ways. So I think it is really important, and I understand where everybody's coming from, that we have to at least get that stated. So for sure it's going to be in our preamble, but can we do it? I haven't been really accepting of the Bill of Rights just because I don't know if it can be, but I'm sure willing to hear everybody, bring this about if it's possible. And I really appreciate what you're saying, Bill.
I'd want to point out that the issue isn't just property rights, it's human behavior. It's not just what you do with your property, it's what you do anywhere you are.
That's true.
And that's why you have police regulations, is you can't pollute, you can't go to someone else's property and pollute, you can't throw trash away, you can't poison the waters. Those are all behavioral. Property rights are behavioral rights. That's what drives the property rights people nuts. I bought this property, why can't I do this? The answer is because we're controlling your behavior. We're not taking an inch of land. We're controlling your behavior. And that's the reality.
So Bill, is it your position that the state already has laws that will address the concerns that the community folks are expressing? Their various concerns are already taken care of by state laws that are in place now? Is that your position?
Federal, Bob. I would put it this way, and I think Patty said it exactly right. The problem is we think differently when we react to damage to nature. We don't think the way the law works. And it's a difficult juxtaposition. And so in order to make things fit what we think, we end up trying to invent new law to fit rights of nature. But it really is a zero-sum game. If humans were not here, nature would be great. You know, it's only because we're here, it's only because what we're doing that nature's having problems. Let me list you what the laws are, just so you have. You have the Growth Management Act, you have SEPA, you have the Hydraulics Protection Act, and believe me, that's a lot stronger than you think. You know, people don't even know about it. The Clean Air, the Department of Ecology, Shoreline Management Act is extremely powerful. The federal preemption and federal oversight, which is considerable on navigable waters, the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, and the Marine Mammal Protection Act. Now, to some extent, some of those laws preempt what you would like to see happen, which is partly what happened with the whale initiative of the state, is that the state had already preempted that area. There were two reasons that initiative was shut down, but that was one. And so, but the first thing we need to do is to see what the laws are and to make them enforced, and then find out what we still need. People are starting over as though all the federal and state laws don't even exist, which I think is starting way behind our own starting line. And it takes a lot of political capital. It wastes it.
I'd like to make a proposal. I would like to propose that Liz, who I'm looking at now, there you are, hi Liz, that Liz, as a kind of representative of community rights, would you say that that would be a valid thing, that you're a representative of community rights San Juan Islands on this committee?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think if we want to have them come speak, they would do a better job of representing themselves.
Yeah, I don't mean to speak, but here's the idea that I have, that you or someone that you think would be a better person to do this than you, who's not on this committee, assemble a list of problems that are perceived that the Bill of Rights, as it's being proposed, would take care of. A specific list of problems. This is happening, this is happening, this is happening, and this is happening, okay? And that maybe we shift those over to Bill and ask Bill, what statutes are in existence, or other case law that is in existence, federal or state, that would take care of this, and how do we get those laws enforced? And if there isn't a law for the specific problem that is being brought up, then we have got a vacancy that we need to fill with some kind of, and if everything is covered by statutes, then we probably would need to shift our emphasis to getting those things enforced. What can we do to as kick in the pants to get those things enforced? I think people are now expecting a Bill of Rights out of us. Yeah, Liz.
So Bob, before we go there, and I'm not opposed to that at all, to have a contrast of what are they saying is missing versus what laws are there or aren't there, and what's being enforced, what could be enforced. I'm not opposed to that at all. Bill, you want to interject something?
I feel strongly. I'm a lawyer and I don't want to steamroll anything. When I learned about the group that was meeting, that most of us attended last week, I immediately contacted the lawyer when I learned who it was. We've become friends. We're exchanging notes. I sent him what I gave you. And I said, please give me a response, because I want my committee to see both sides. If there are two sides, I want two lawyers making their pitch. I'm making mine, but it's not the only pitch to make, I'm sure. And so I said, can you get it done in 2 weeks? He said he thought he could. And bless him, he said he wouldn't charge, because I told him I would have to pay him out of my pocket.
Uh-oh.
I think it's extremely important that we see the whole picture. And I'm not it. I'm only giving you mine. And I hope that the entire group, the CRC, could see. As I say, I sent a copy of what I did to Kevin, so he would know what was moving underground. But I also told him that there's going to be a response from a lawyer who does look at things differently. And I want to be sure we all get to see it before we make any decisions.
Boy, that sounds good to me.
So Bob, I wanted to get back because I let
oh
Bill,
yeah, you weren't
I
finished,
let
were
Bill
you?
leap in there with his thoughts.
Sure, go ahead.
So I did stay on that call just briefly after they ended the Community Rights San Juan
Mhm.
Conversation Cafe. And Lindsay is willing to come speak to this group or our whole group. You know, he's happy to come do that.
Yeah.
And Bill, I'm trying to just really get my head around what you're proposing. So I feel like I can articulate it well, and I'm not there yet. So, and I don't know if that's a private conversation you and I have, if everybody else feels like they're, or if we take our time collectively. So you guys want me to tell Bill what I think I heard him say and you guys listen in on that? Or would you
Yes.
prefer us to do that in the sidebar?
No, absolutely. Please, Liz, go ahead.
Okay. So Bill, if I understand you, your sense is, and I'm going to have a whiny puppy in a moment, sorry. Your sense is that there are a slew of laws already in place that would protect the natural environment. And the problem is that those laws, regulations are not codes, are not being enforced. And by putting in place a climate czar, I know that's not the title we want to use, whatever that position is, that would put a person in place with the power and resources to help ensure that at least a lot more of those things were enforced versus the, high disregard that's going on for them currently. Am I close?
My position is in the, I didn't talk about the environmental officer. I can briefly talk about that, but basically what my position is to try to deal with the rights of nature is set forth in the horrible 5-page footnoted magnum opus that I sent out the other day.
Thank you for owning that.
Yeah, but as far as the officer is concerned, I would give the officer no power. And I'll tell you why, because you have to remember that when you it wouldn't be the enforcer. The county already has enforcement. It isn't paying for it. And so the enforcement is inadequate. But the machinery is there. Randy is happy to move, but he doesn't have the cases built up presented to him because the people in the departments have been laid off. And so the cases, people are building docks. And you see the things in the papers. Docks appear overnight. They're illegal. And the county doesn't have the money to pursue it.
So Bill, only because I can only truncate this in my brain, with your permission, I'm going to interrupt you a little bit.
No.
So it's a budgetary issue for enforcement.
That's at the bottom. Now,
okay.
There's one other issue though, and this is where, again, we talk about creating rights and we want to give somebody power. When you're starting to shift the rights of nature, you are, as we discussed with Patty, the fact that man's powers go down. They should. They've got to be selectively reduced in order that nature isn't harmed and our future isn't harmed. But that has to be done by the people because generally speaking, having the people give up powers voluntarily is a lot cheaper than doing what a lot of people have in mind on our group.
And what does that look like if it's done by the people?
Well, here's an example. Let's say you had an officer, but one of the things the officer had was the confidence of the people. You get that by making that officer elected, not appointed, because
okay, I'm with you there.
An elected official has at least the appearance of the acceptance of the people. Now,
so you've got an elected person in that position, but they don't have power.
Right.
They have the trust of the people.
Yes.
But they don't have power.
That's right. Because remember, we've already got people who are elected, whose job is to exert power, and they're called council members.
So Bill, since our council or in the instances where our council members are blowing off, the people, the voice of the people, where do we get teeth is the word I've come to use. Where do we get substantial protection
Okay.
before it's too late?
Well, I'll tell you, there are two reasons. There are two things going on here. One is that it isn't that the council is blowing us off. They don't have the money. And so they're allocating the money. Things are not happening in this county all over the place because we have a stinko budget. And
So Bill, wasn't it you earlier who said that they're not paying attention to the comp plan? And
that's a different issue, but you're right. And
that's what I was referring to when I said blowing us off, that we've been told that they don't go look there, and thousands of dollars and hours were spent developing that voice from the people.
Yes.
And I find it very disconcerting to hear that it is not, being heavily attended to.
Well, here's what happened. After all, they're like us, they're people.
Right.
And when the first comp plan was adopted, the council was told what the rules were. Randy told them, and they quickly did it. The problem is, institutionally, it was forgotten. They're not blowing us off because they don't think we're worth paying attention to.
Okay.
The truth is, neither the manager nor anybody else knows about that statute today. They've all forgotten. And that's why it needs to be in our
Knows
charter.
about what statute today?
There's a statute that says that the county cannot spend capital expenses on something that is not in the charter. Not in the comp plan. That's the statute. It says, when you do your capital budget, pay attention to the comp plan, and you have to comply with it. And if it isn't in the comp plan, you have no business spending the money on it. That's basically what it does. Now, the problem is, Liz, that it's been forgotten. And that happens. I mean, we all forget.
Yeah.
It's institutional forgetting. One of the purposes of the charter is to act as an institutional reminder. And then what you do is you do put a provision in there saying the county shall not expend capital monies in violation of, and cite the statute. That takes care of that because they have a document that reminds them. But the other half is getting people to give up rights in their property that for the greater good. Now, that requires a particular kind of personality. It does not require a personality who is an enforcer. It requires a personality who can go out and organize neighborhoods and say, this watershed could be thus and so for you if you agree to a regional bill for this, which the council has the power to do. If you landowners, by and large, agree, and there are people in this county who could convince a group of people, because it does preserve property values. That's one thing people are really sensitive to. Then the people may agree to a special limitation on their property. Now, this takes real art, but if you look at what's going on in Honolulu, and I don't know if I got that article out, but they have a special officer for the city of Honolulu that does nothing but encourage citizen activists to act in concert. He's paid to do this. And we need that here in order to encourage people to work for the greater good. It doesn't all have to be enforcement. If you look at little cooperatives, the little housing groups, low-income housing groups, you'll see that they tend to work together. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for community cooperation. The truth of the matter is, community is the point of it all, the natural community and the human community. And we need to make our human community healthy. And you start by saying, in this small community, because they all start small, this is what our possibilities are for a beautiful, natural place that we all care about. And we're all bonded by the place we live in, because we are. But it's the only way you can counter the real estate business.
Okay. I can tell what I would really value is to hear, to, be a fly on the wall and listen to you and Lindsay speak with each other. So if you all are willing, I'm going to see if I can set that up for us. Is that?
Yeah. I think that's something like that is a good idea. And I don't think you have to be a fly on the wall. I think we can all be in attendance and listening to something like that.
I only say that because years ago, I sidestep here for a second. There was a gentleman, an older gentleman, who was a physicist and actually they were both physicists, and one was older and one was younger. And we would have these conversations where I'd invite them over for dinner, and then these two men would talk to each other on a level that was like, way beyond my cellular brain capacity. But it was fascinating to just go, and see these nuances of the conversation that I can't bring to the table to join you, Bill. And so for me, it would be really valuable to have somebody like Lindsay who understands the nuances the way you do and listen to the two of you talk.
He's a terrific guy.
Yeah, he really is.
How do other people feel about the idea of, say, Bill and Lindsay in either a debate or a conversation, a back and forth, not really a debate, but a back and forth, answering each other's questions, either for our committee, or we might go to the big committee and say, this is important enough that we need to set aside some time for everybody on the commission to hear this, because our committee is going to be dealing with it and deciding. How does the rest of the committee feel about that?
Yes.
Well, we'll see.
Patty?
We'll see what Lindsay
Kyle, we haven't been hearing from you. What do you think about that idea?
I have some sense listening that I'm at a disadvantage for not hearing the community conversation last week. And I'm not sure if that was recorded. I'd be happy to catch up on some of that.
Do you know, Liz, if it was recorded? Oops, can't hear you, Liz.
It was recorded.
Okay. I'm not sure if somebody has that or has the link to help me get to that place, but I'm aware of a couple things, and I don't want to derail this. To answer your question first, Bob, I think if we frame, as a committee, if we frame the piece of our task that we set aside ahead of time, so it's clear what people will be focusing on or hearing from if Lindsay and Bill have this open conversation, which I would be really interested to hear. I think if it's framed, it has the potential to sort of stay on focus and to be a piece of our conversation. I think there are a lot of other potential people to hear from, kind of across the subject matter we said we would cover. And there's some crossover I'm hearing here between the climate and environment conversation. I would like us to focus on structure. So if there's mechanism for, we said we'd talk about sort of review process, and I don't want to get away from what we're talking about because I personally feel very strongly this is really bitter medicine. I would like us to be able to have, as citizens, more capacity to make change and to encourage the recognition of the rights of nature. I mean, this is all very human-centric and ethnocentric conversation, right? We're now at a place in civilization where we have to sort of designate rights to nature. And from a growth perspective, once we get to a certain place in this county of growth and population, and if there aren't whales or the natural environment doesn't have the degree of attraction it does now, some of this conversation is going to be irrelevant. Now there might always be kind of a, the mainland or the other world there may always be a relative benefit to being here, and people may always have that relationship. But I'm aware, listening to this, that there are very limited ways that we can enact. I mean, between the concern over future litigation and acting outside of the state constitution, I think that we focus on mechanisms, and if we have to, people, either county employees or oversight mechanisms that draw back some of this recognition for what's already legally in place. And I guess I'll summarize and just say I'm concerned that we get off tangentially too far, and we're having really great conversation that's really energizing, but that doesn't have the teeth that Bill's talking about. So I'd love that conversation. Right. I would even give it time in our future meeting agenda. But my sense is, comparing our first meeting with today, I think I missed a lot of really motivating conversation and engaging material at that event last Thursday. But I do want us to go ahead.
Well,
is that enough?
We don't want to get, I think we don't want to get beyond our charge, beyond the charge of this particular committee. This committee is not charged with developing the detailed mechanisms needed to protect our environment, our local environment. We're charged with, I believe, writing a preamble, addressing the question of a Bill of Rights, and I think people are expecting us to produce a Bill of Rights, whatever that looks like. And then the third thing that we haven't even been talking about at all is to look at what the citizenry around us considers to be the problems that need to be addressed, what is working and not working, and then bring that to the rest of the commission and say here's what's going on. And we'll talk about that down the road here, but I think the upcoming town halls will help with that. But maybe I think the conversation, I personally think the conversation that we were talking about between Bill and Lindsay would be very interesting and informative, because Lindsay's a very bright guy, and I think he's going to be able to respond to what Bill has to say, and I think Bill is going to be able to respond to what Lindsay has to say. Yeah, Bill.
I just want to say that the only reason I did what I did and presented it to this committee is because I wanted to put some caution into the interest in creating nature as the beneficiary of the Bill of Rights. Anything that benefits nature benefits people, but not necessarily economically, certainly not a particular aspect of our population. And I hope that we focus more on personal rights and on the qualities of our governance, which do relate to nature, because that's where we're falling down. And so I just wrote what I wrote to say, let's not spend our time busy creating rights in nature when its benefits legally are going to turn out to be illusory. Let's focus on what we need to focus on to make our government protect people and nature. And I would put it that way. And if we have ideas, we can tell it to the other committees that are responsible for those areas.
I don't think that the various advocates out there for this are asking us to create any rights in nature. I think they're asking us to recognize rights that exist that have heretofore been not recognized. That happened back in 1776. I mean, all those truths were held to be self-evident, that they're already there, and now we're expressing them. We're letting folks know by putting it in words that these are important things. I myself am in favor of a Bill of Rights that includes both what we think are the important human rights that we ought to be looking at, and then what the rights are that nature has in a broad sense, not saying, and this is how we're going to enforce these rights and that kind of thing. That needs to come kind of legislatively, I suppose. And that's one of the reasons why we need this advocate for the environment, someone who will actually suggest verbiage and who will push our council to adopt provisions which are not contrary to state or federal provisions that will affect what we want to effect. So, but I personally think that a conversation between Bill and Leslie, where they're not Leslie, but
Bob,
Lindsay, where they're going, where they're dealing with each other's issues. Yeah, Bill.
Bob, I think we have to be careful where the line is. I think Lindsay has a slightly different idea than what you're describing, and I'm looking here at the community rights invitation to come to their meetings, and they say, could a Bill of Rights include the rights of nature, language in the Home Rule Charter be a way for us to state our values? There I agree. Great. Protect ourselves and protect the natural world around us. Now, that's different. Protect means do something to have an effect. That's not a statement of values. And I think you'll find when you talk to Lindsay, you'll discover that his intention is to create rights in nature. That's not our charge. Our charge is, I think, basically to talk about our values and how we hope that people and the county will behave. And I don't think our charge goes any further, but I think you'll find that with Lindsay, he's going a good deal further, because just as Pennsylvania does, and that's because of its constitution, by the way, which is peculiar, it especially dictates and retains the rights of nature. And so the community rights group is really speaking a little more strongly than our committee is authorized to deal with. Just as you say, our committee is dealing with values. We're not creating rights. But I think you'll find the conversation with Lindsay, and if he comes to a meeting, it'd be wonderful. But that's why I asked him for a written product, not knowing what this group is going to do, because I want people to see what he has in mind. I think people are thinking two things at once on this.
When is he going to give you that, Lindsay?
Well, I think probably in another week, maybe by our next meeting. I had said 2 weeks, but I can, when you got a lawyer for free, you can always push them.
Well, it would be interesting if we had it by the next meeting to be able to look at that and look at what your response is, go over it, and be that much better informed.
I want to make a disclosure. I've been talking back and forth with Minor Lyle, and he comes to our general meeting. He isn't with us now, but I've told him what I was up to, and I've told him about my that I was writing something, and it was, as you can see from my memo, it is a memo to this committee. It's not a memo to the CRC, because you guys get to see it first. The CRC has not seen it. Although Kevin has, just as I say, so he knows what I'm doing. But I'm trying to give the county a kick in the butt so that its budget and its expenditures and its behavior will move in a direction that will in fact protect nature. It isn't a question of creating rights, it's a question of preserving ourselves. And I put it in the terms of the economy because I know the property rights people see the world that way. And it's a message to them. But anyway, I just wanted to tell you that it's out there, it's floating around, and that's all I want to say
I think that regardless of how focused on nature we get, the fact is that the only way you promote what we're calling the rights of nature is by explaining to human beings how protecting those rights is going to benefit them. Because it is, after all, human beings who take the votes, who pay the dollars, who have everything to do, who write down the words, you know, that are then put in a document, created in a document and preserved and all of that. Those are human beings, you know, it's not the orcas that are doing that, or the trees. And if lawsuits need to be filed to protect nature, it's not going to be, you know, nature doing it. It's going to be their next friend, some group who believes in these rights. So we're always going to have to talk about how these things are eventually going to benefit human beings. And if they don't immediately, if it's not the first thing that you bump into, if it looks like it's hurting human beings, you better go beyond that and find out how eventually it helps us. And I believe it does. You know, we just need to be able to explain that, and we need to do it. If any of this is going to be in the charter, we need to do it so we can explain it to the people who are asking to vote for those provisions in the charter. Yeah, Patty.
Two things. I was just going to say that, yeah, all of this is consciousness rising. And the more we get it out there, even if it doesn't end up in the charter, at least it will be a conversation in the community. Say we do a thing and put it on the ballot and it doesn't pass, it's still been acknowledged and people are way aware of it. I mean, it won't be wasted effort. But my second thing is, Bill, I haven't read what you sent and I'm not sure, it's lost in my email somewhere.
I haven't read either.
Yeah, I want to read it, but I don't trust my ability to find things in my email because a lot of things just go away. I don't know where they are.
Kyle.
I have a proposal on that level too, and this means folks have to, it's a lot of work up front, but I think having, and if we need another site that works better for people, I propose this as well. We need a depository, a repository for all of these, the documents that we come up with or that we refer to, maybe sometimes even some of what's in, and I did read your Magna, whatever we want to call it, Bill. It is great. Things like that, so long as they are sufficient for public eyes, I think they need to be centralized so people can access them. I'm finding an increasingly difficult time picking stuff out of the email list because of who it comes from and when and how far back. So I'd make that pitch, and I'm willing to help people find that. But if we're not all going to use the Teams folder section because it's too difficult to get to, and we still have to satisfy Randy and public access, but we need to, I want us to start doing that.
Kyle, are you talking about a repository for documents involving this particular thing we're discussing now?
Well,
Okay.
anything, in fact, that we end up doing in the committee's work, but we could do it by subject matter. So now there's reference to this outside group and the work they do, some of the work that their individual members do.
Okay.
Those links, making those links and that material accessible is what I'm talking about.
When we talk to Catherine and the other folks with the commission about constructing this, how are we going to get around them saying, well, we already have a place with folders and just pick them out? And I mean,
well, the way you get around it, unfortunately, I think, is to push everyone on the commission to use that tool. I mean, we rubbed against this with whether we were going to use Teams for our meetings or Zoom for our meetings. If that's a topic for the whole commission, I mean, the interest in trying to get the information usable just by me, just for me to be able to see what's important to all of you, is the only issue really that I care about, except that we've said it'll be publicly accessible as well. So it means we have to learn Teams. It means we all have to learn how to access that folder set in the files of Teams, which may be, that may be a topic for the regular commission conversation.
yeah, we got a meeting obviously coming up tomorrow of the full commission. On the agenda, there should be an item at the end of it called new business. What if we make this an item of new business? And Kyle, would you be willing to be the person who brings it up? Well, then let's do that. Let's have you bring up this idea and think it through. So between now and then, so you can express just what you're talking about. And maybe we can make something like that happen. We can certainly have a discussion regarding it. Yeah, Patty.
I did have problems getting to Teams, but I was finally successful. Although when I'm looking at the page there really isn't anything that's, Tony has put things down. So maybe I'm in the wrong Teams file, but I can see that being useful. And yes, anywhere we can put something that isn't lost in email would be so positive.
Well, let's do that. So Kyle's going to do that, bring that up as new business on the agenda tomorrow afternoon when we're dealing with this. Now, it's my recollection that what we did regarding the first part of the first part of the Constitution is called the preamble. Yeah, the preamble versus this Bill of Rights was that we decided to put the preamble aside while we talked about the Bill of Rights. But what I'm hearing is that possibly what we want to do is express our values regarding the rights of nature. I believe that expression of values does not belong in a Bill of Rights. It belongs in the preamble, where we sit down and express those values, maybe in more than just the sentence. In the original preamble that I wrote, that I suggested, there were 3 sentences, and the third one did that, but we maybe at somewhat more length, but we can't be, they've just got to be values. They've not got to be, this is how we are going to enforce these values. Put that in the preamble, and then think about what does that mean then about a Bill of Rights? It's still thorny to me. It's not difficult for me to conceive of a Bill of Rights for human beings, which essentially is modeled after rights that have been institutionalized federally and statewide, but then adds that makes sure that that all the categories of human beings that we can think of are included, and also maybe some stuff about immigration, and those kinds of things. But and maybe not. Maybe that's not what people want. But I'm still scratching my head about what we include in a Bill of Rights regarding the kind of enforcement of the values that we will express in the preamble. So, yeah, Bill.
I think the danger of a Bill of Rights is if they're not enforceable, they're not rights. They belong in the preamble. They're values. Until something rises to the point where it's enforceable, it's a value.
Well,
and so I think our preamble really should say, for example, we recognize that our lives and our livelihoods rest entirely upon the condition of nature. And we can do that because it is a value. It's also a reality. It's unarguable. The issue of creating a right in people, all we're doing then is repeating state and federal rights. We don't have the power to create new rights. That's the problem. And so if you want to list a lot of rights that make people feel good, that's good. But if you want to list the values that particularly marks this county, then we tie our lives to nature, and we should do that. And I think the preamble is the first step. After that, we take a look to say, what in here can we deal with in terms of enforcement? And that really has to do with the mechanics of how the county works. It has nothing to do with creating new rights. It has to do with making the county work to make our values expressed. I personally don't feel a Bill of Rights has any relevance. I think the preamble, and here's what we think is important, and here's how we're going to do it. In between has no legal significance, and the Bill of the Values, the preamble, does say we're doing all these things with this coloration. The preamble sets a coloration of attitude. It's very important for that purpose.
But Bill, what if we had a Bill of Rights that included items regarding nature that were, which items were formulated this way? It's in a formulation you'll all recognize. The county council shall make no ordinance which, which inhibits the free speech, for human beings, for instance. That basically is what our Bill of Rights does. Our Bill of Rights says the government shall make no law which impinges on this or impinges on that or impinges on this. And for the most part, it's, you can't do this stuff to us. You can't quarter troops in our homes. You can't keep us from assembling. You can't keep us from free speech. So what would that look like protecting, say, protecting orcas from abuse by people who want to get up too close to them and look at them? You can't impinge upon, you shall make no ordinance that impinges upon orca's right to live without this kind of harassment.
Well, I think that's going to be a question for Randy, but my feeling is that we don't have the power to limit the power of our legislative body. The charter doesn't have that power. It deals with the power that the Constitution has given it, and allocates, the charter allocates the powers that the county has. That's all it does.
Right.
But we can ask Randy. That's one lawyer's view. Two lawyers, one lawyer in town starves. Two lawyers do very well. But Randy's the lawyer we have to follow, I think.
Yeah.
So Bob, I think that you ought to present it to the group, and if the group thinks there's some questions about it, I happen to, but I'm not the boss, and it doesn't matter. I think we do need to have a whack at the preamble and a whack at the Bill of Rights, and maybe somebody would be willing to have a whack at it. We could discuss it next week.
Sounds like it sounds like we're moving back to square one regarding that, about the Bill of Rights coming first. And I agree. I think that that we ought to deal with a preamble that expresses our values.
Yes, let's start there.
As a first step, that expresses our values about all of this. And I think that we ought to deal with that next week. We ought to deal with, how do you all feel about that? Deal with a preamble. And I'm willing to start off with some language, and maybe others of you can come up with some language regarding that. But I'm willing to take what I've originally produced as a suggested preamble and expand that to specifically express what our values are regarding the rights of nature. And that we could start off with that, toss it out next week, something new. One of the others of you has some certain language that would fit better. But what if we did that regarding how to proceed on this time-wise? That we started with that. Kyle, Liz, what do you think? Liz, get your hand up.
So I've been over here having a coughing attack, so missed some of it. But I do wonder, in terms of aligning community support and full engagement behind whatever it is we propose, I think that's why I'm keep focusing on what the Community Rights San Juan Islands group
Yes.
is. As so, Bill, does it make sense for you, for us to propose that you go speak to their group and have a conversation with them and a way to begin to, because I don't think they are hardline about having a Bill of Rights. They're hardline about, we have a very small window, and what's the best thing we can do on behalf of ourselves and nature, which in fact are one and the same. and you've said that if nature doesn't thrive, then we won't survive, and our way of life is going to. So that's what they're hardline about. So does it make sense for you to go speak with them?
Well, Julianne and I are in fairly
Right.
constant communication. I've told her about what I said to this committee, but even what I gave Minor Mile, I embargoed till today because you guys hadn't seen it, and I didn't want anything out that you guys hadn't seen. And it's only a memo to this committee. It's not an action by the committee. But I invited her to today's meeting because I said we'd probably end up discussing it. She isn't here, but I will send her a copy of what I wrote. I don't, it's
So,
very.
Bill, let me interrupt you. Sorry. I've gotten a phone call and text from Julianne that I have not taken up during this meeting. So I wonder if she had a problem trying to get on.
It might be, but anyway,
Yeah.
I'll put it this way. I don't really have time. I'm doing a couple of other things to try to change or alter or even educate a huge group of people. And I think it'd be very hard to do in a balanced way until we hear back from the other lawyer who has a different point of view. And I think we should open the topic when both lawyers have spoken. I don't know whether I want to push what I wrote on Julianne or not, because it is one-sided. I feel strongly about it, but people, just the way we do, we think of the rights of nature. What we don't think is about limiting the rights of humans, but that's the reality. The governmental reality is to stop somebody from doing something. That's what all law does, one way or another. It's a list of all the things you can't do. It's the 10 commandments expanded to a very high power. But it's hard to sell.
Patty.
I think one of the obvious things here is going back to the comprehensive plan, which has had so much input by everybody that's concerned about this. And it really deals with all of this. And we can't ignore that. We need to meld the plan into the county charter with some power or whatever, because, that's been argued for years, basically, what can happen and what, how we can save nature. It's already in the plan.
I think one thing that needs to happen, Patty, regarding that is we need to adopt the proposal for an advocate for the environment. And I really think that's going to happen, whether that person's called a commissioner or an advocate or whatever. And one thing that person needs to have in his portfolio is the assignment to look at what the comprehensive plan says now and what it may say tomorrow and the next day, and take out the things that are directly effective, that directly affect the environment, and hold the county council's feet to the fire and administrators' feet to the fire regarding what that comprehensive plan says, and report to the community what their response is. These people on the county council are not listening to what I am saying, or, hey, I'm getting a good audience here. I think we're going to have some traction from the county council to do some of these things. Somebody in that position who will do that. Now, that's taking a step way back from what I originally proposed, because it is so kind of out there. As to whether or not it's constitutional, and whether or not you could give this advocate veto power over the council provisions that don't fit, and all of that. But anyway, I think that's going to be an important thing. The missions of these various committees, are going to end up meshing, obviously. And that's one area where it's really important. Our Bill of Rights doesn't mean a whole lot, even if we're specific in it. Doesn't mean a whole lot if there's nobody, nobody out there is going to enforce it. Yeah, Liz.
It looked like Kyle was trying to interject something.
Okay, I'm sorry, Kyle.
Okay, no interjection. I have to remember that where this is only our second meeting and the other committees are, one meeting makes a big difference in the
Yes, it does.
formation. So I would like to, and I'm not sure she's the right person, but Erica Shook, who's planning director for the county, has some responsibility for the comprehensive plan, and it's kind of its holding. If somebody else is better, I certainly would entertain that. But I think for my own clarity, I think one of the things I'm seeing as a gap is I'm inclined to try and fix a problem that ought to have fixes already in place in the county. And if the question is we don't have the employment structure or we don't have the depth of mission across that staff group to achieve what's already in place, then adding whatever other than maybe preamble and Bill of Rights is going to be really kind of an empty gesture. So we need to hear from county employees and department heads, I think, on this topic already and see where those folks feel like the breakdown is. In my sense, the county council is 2/3, 66% brand new. I think that there's a possibility that with those people, especially sooner than later, before they're fully initiated into the position, we get some of their opinion on how, that could really fundamentally change the uptake of some of what we're talking about, just the application of the comp plan and all of its subdivisions. Now is the time, I think, for us to hear from people. Now, if the consensus is that it's dysfunctional or it's broken because there's a lacking in structure that the charter, our opportunity to change the charter can help fix, that's a place where I think we have way more traction. And unfortunately, maybe we give some head nod to some of the other NGOs and nonprofits that are working on the topics now, our approval or our support. I want to have more impact than I know I can have, but I want to acknowledge that up front and figure out where we can make the most difference. So if I'd like to hear from Erica or somebody like that, I'd love to hear from some other people who've made, so Justice and Equity has heard from some really great people who are marginally internal or external, who've done work on the outside to make inroads on the topic. So I'm not sure who those people are. I would propose that for the next meeting, we all bring the names of people we want to hear from that are making those, that are having an impact or did apply themselves and make success. We talked about this at the general CRC 2 times ago. If there's somebody who was part of helping the King County review be successful, those are the places. To your other question about Bill of Rights, I'm happy to continue that conversation, maybe even make that next week's focus. I worry that will trickle through all of our meetings. I'd love to say, let's make some proposals and pick a date in April or something, or we sort of cut that off and get to some of the other things. That's just my thought, but I'd love to continually hear from other people that are finding out, and Randy is one of them, finding out where we could probably get traction and where we can't.
All right. Do you think, Kyle, are you thinking about people who would come and talk to this committee, or who this committee would invite to come talk to the commission as a whole?
Both. I think it depends. Mm-hmm. Erica, I think, and I see a line still, I said this before, there's a line between process and specifics, rights of nature. How to fit the structural piece into the charter is certainly in this committee. The content of it, in terms of environment, might be another committee's work, and Bill said that too. So some of those people might end up being for the whole commission audience. Mm-hmm. But I think the comp plan, we can talk about nuts and bolts of the comp plan also at just this committee level.
Bill, let me make this observation, then I'll call on you. Well, no, go ahead. Go ahead, Bill. I'll wait on you. Go ahead. What do you have to say?
I just want to say that the nuts and bolts, when you say what's working and not's working, looking at your thing, the charter is a nuts and bolts device. But let me give you an example, and I may have discussed it in the first one. When sewer and water districts want to expand, they have to adopt their own comprehensive plan. And when they extend their lines so that suburbia can expand out into the forests and over the pasture lands, they amend their comprehensive plans. There's a catch. They have to submit amendments to their comprehensive plans to the county council. The county council can say, no, you're not going to expand into that area because it is a recharge area. It is this, it is that. And this, by the way, is what the environmental officer would be reporting about. But do you know that the council has never even reviewed, never looked at a sewer and water comprehensive plan of any of the sewer water districts in the county? It has that power. And I have written them about it. I tried to put it into the comprehensive plan. The planning department rejected it. Don't get the idea that the comprehensive plan is all citizen generated. It's far from it. It goes to the planning department that can ding it, and then the county council can ding it. But I complained about this because this is a tool that the county will not use. And I think that the council should be required, the county council should be required, forced to review it and take responsibility, political responsibility for the expansion of urban areas.
Is there another committee that is dealing with this issue that you all know of the comprehensive plan and it just sitting out there and not being attended to by the council? Is there another?
My suggestion is, because you put in here what's working and what's not working, so you're hearing a gripe session here. We can put our list out to the body of the CRC, and the CRC can assign those issues to the appropriate committee. It's not up to us.
Right.
But
right.
If it isn't in our bailiwick, we can say, how about this? How about that?
Okay. I wanted to suggest, if we're going to do something like bring Erica Shuk before us and talk to her about the tools to make this stuff reasonable, hey, this is how we can make this happen. We're not doing it now. We don't have this tool. We need these tools or whatever. I want to suggest that we give her an example, something that she can follow through with, an example of a particular right of nature that we want to recognize. I'm going to use that language because I personally believe that that's the right language to use, to recognize the right rather than to create the right. I mean, I think the right is already there and hadn't been recognized yet. One particular one, I don't know what that would be, and then say, okay, the right of water, to not be disturbed beyond this level or without these kind of considerations or whatever. And say, okay, how do we do this? How would you do it? What do you need? What would you need to enforce this? If this were something that we thought ought to be out there, because without that, as we've all been saying, we're spinning our wheels.
Bob, I think that nature is not water. It is not soil. It is not creatures. It is a system of which we are a part. And one of the problems with creating rights in nature is you're starting to deal with parts. And you'll never list them all. We don't even know what they all are. The smallest and the largest, and the physics and the biology involved, we're ignorant.
They may be in conflict.
So the only way we can look at it is to say that we have to keep it working smoothly, whatever it is. I think specifics only weaken it. I'm on the soapbox again, but the point is, if you list something, and it's what I told the group last Friday, if you list something and you leave it off the list, it is presumed not to be intended to be included.
What
it's
is it?
legal.
Ab inclusio.
Latin for that, and all lawyers do. So I think, be careful. I think we have to say that anything that impairs the smooth operation of a healthy natural system is deleterious to man and our economy. And I think we can say it that simply without going into all the details of look at all I know, because what we don't know is far greater.
That seems like a much faster invite to a law.
Like, but Bill, I mean,
Patty wanted to say something, Bob.
yeah.
I just have a question
Okay.
about comprehensive plans. I guess I'm a little confused when you mentioned, Bill, that these different groups need to make up a comprehensive plan. Is that part of the big comprehensive plan, or are these individual ones that the council can review, or is it all the comprehensive plan? I'm confused about the terminology.
People need to read it.
No, but when you were talking about the sewer district making a comprehensive plan, is that separate from the big one?
Yes, it's the sewer district's comprehensive plan. The water, they have their own little comprehensive plan. But when they extend pipes, they have to do, I used to do this. I used to be a municipal lawyer, and I used to work on raising the money for these things. And they have to pass a plan and system resolution. They have a plan and system, and it simply describes all the pipes in place and the pumps and the wells and the whole thing. It's what they have. It's their natural system. And when they want to extend it and they want to borrow money for it, they have to adopt what they call, for some reason, a plan and system of what it is they intend to do with the money they're borrowing. And actually, they have to do it anytime they extend it anyway. So it gets filed with the county. The county has something like 10 or 11 days to take a look at it. And they actually have the right to veto it.
So that was my confusion, because you called it a comprehensive plan and I got mixed up with the whole big one. But the county then reviews anything that might expand what's going on, basically, or
Yes.
And so we need somehow to say, hey, council members, you need to review this.
Yeah, the GMA, as well as the municipal financing rules, require every municipal corporation to have a comprehensive plan of some sort. And sewer districts are municipal corporations. Water district. What I'm really focusing on is the East Sound Water District and how it's going to start sprawl. And what needs to happen, if you want to protect nature, you have to bring people in, not spread them out. And the idea is ultimately we need a 2030 city with a 1,600 surroundings around it.
Hey, we need to move on to another agenda item. And then at the end, I'll try and put together, what you all have said you want to do next. But I want to take a very brief look in the few minutes that we have left about this, reviewing what has worked well and what hasn't worked well. Specifically on this preliminary suggestions, on the things that looks like this. Jane and Kyle from our group here, and then David Dellendorf, their names are all down for this one paragraph that says, undertake a thorough review of what has not been working well for our county government since the last review, and ensure that representative voices of women, men, youth, girls, boys, the elderly, women, and people of color, minority groups, the marginalized voices in our society, and other people of diverse backgrounds are heard when presentations are put forward to the CRC, also to be consulted to be the business community across the county. So we're talking about, the process we're talking about is the process that the CRC uses to arrive at its conclusions. And also, how are we going to find out what the people think has been working and what hasn't been working? Okay, so if we don't have time to address that now, and if it's going to be a big discussion, we can put it off till next week. But initially, do you all have observations regarding that?
Bob, I have a suggestion. Every committee has our problem, and maybe what we ought to propose as a process to the CRC is that every committee that discovers something that needs to be dealt with, I think Kyle's idea of what's working and what's not working is perfect. But anytime they discover that, they ought to forward it to the appropriate committee, saying, we think this, you guys need to look at this. Because every committee is going to discover something, it's outside itself. And this is what we think you ought to look at, and here is why. Some report like that. And if we reported tomorrow that this might be a way the CRC would operate, because right now it's still in fibrillation. The best way to let them know is to say, let the committees suggest things to other committees to consider. We'll be able to focus on things that people care about.
I think that's a good idea, Bill, but I think it's important that we not just deal with things that we like stumble upon. I think that this committee has a responsibility
That's right.
to go out and seek those, and maybe the upcoming groups, what are they called?
We could discover by divine inspiration.
Next week, when we have the 2 meetings with the
Town hall.
town hall, thank you. If we all attend those town halls and, take the appropriate notes regarding, these are the things that folks are saying are working and are not working. And then, emerge from that. Those are both next week, aren't they? Or are they this week? This week? So before our next meeting, both of those things will have occurred, right?
Well,
So-
we could, here's what I'm really asking. I'm asking as to whether or not this committee can agree that we propose to the CRC tomorrow that matters that are uncovered, that are outside the originating committee be referred to the appropriate committee. That's all I'm suggesting.
Sure. Well, why don't, Bill, yes, Kyle.
I'm just going to say, I think there'll be a question. I think maybe our committee is the most difficult to define or describe. So as long as we're clear on what process is for other people to direct things towards us, I think that's a really splendid idea. And I think people would take that up. But I would ask right now, what is process? What's the definition of process? Is that process within the charter?
I took the original process, and maybe it's like something that you need to do before the charter even begins its business, which of course it's well into, is helping to devise the way that the committee will arrive at its conclusions. To me, I don't know. I mean, it is tough to talk about. We may be misnamed, actually, because I think it's tough to talk about how the commission is going to proceed when we've been going for 2 months, however long we've been going. It's kind of a strange. It's getting the horse way behind the cart. So yeah, Patty, you're on mute. Sorry, I got to go on mute just a second.
I just have to say that of the 3 things you have listed, I never really took the process part of it seriously, in that I think that the CRC as a whole is moving as it is. And I'm not sure that we can, tell it how to do its job, because it's now divided up into these little committees. And what do we do? I mean, I never quite understood what that was. We're trying to find out from the community what their concerns are and any feedback. And I've certainly been talking to people that I know to tell me anything they have in case they can't go to the town halls. But exactly at this point, do we lay out, okay, I mean, it seems like the committee as a whole sort of has its process already. They're going to get committee reports and we're going to be discussing these things. I mean, what more is there? Oh,
Simply, go ahead,
Right, so-
Kyle.
The way that this all came about was this thing here. And somebody other than us decided that all these things were going to go under a committee with this name. All right. And so this is our, what they showed up here instead of somewhere else. And so we have been assigned this job. And to me, I really, maybe that whole thing about how other people are going to proceed is really, they're figuring that out for themselves. The three things I took from this was the Bill of Rights, the preamble, and the thing that Kyle had written about here, undertaking a thorough review of what has been working well, what's working and what's not working, and the stuff that's not working are the things that we should address, and the stuff that the community thinks are working, we should tell the rest of the commission to get their hands off of it, leave it alone. People like this, and we need to do, in my opinion, what we can to discover what those things are. Kyle, you had your hand up.
I know Bill, go ahead, Bill.
Bill was first. I'm sorry. Bill
Right.
was first.
Well, no, Kyle, go ahead.
Okay.
I just for clarity for this group, one of the examples for process, and it's divergent from a lot of what we've been talking about today, is a number of people approached me early who are county employees who feel like the process of them having, say, a department head and responding to that department head is interrupted by having a county manager who, in their opinion, sort of reaches through the lines to do sometimes appropriate and oftentimes inappropriate sort of directing. I know so that the process is a couple of potentials there. One, and this gets back to elected versus appointed, does there need to be a mechanism by which department heads are evaluated annually, or a means for supervision of the county manager differently than the county council, so that, that's already in place, that's designed very clearly in the charter, but it doesn't necessarily work consistently. Or now, because so many employees are triple tasked, because the county is shrinking, does there need to be more checks and balances on that? So that's the process in the county, and that was an example.
And Kyle, should that concern be forwarded to the governance committee rather than us?
Potentially.
Yeah.
it's also being talked about
Yeah.
at the human, the other committee that I'm on, whatever that's called. We are discussing those sorts of things. So
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
an awful lot of overlap.
I suggest that we officially narrow down our scope to producing a preamble dealing with the idea of a Bill of Rights one way or another, and of trying to find out what the public thinks is working in governance and also in life here, and what isn't working, and to tell the commission what our discoveries are in that regard, that they should keep their hands off of this, and they should be dealing with this if they're not dealing with it yet. What do y'all think about that? About having that be what we're doing? Yeah, Kyle.
Well, I think I just heard Patty say that governance is dealing with the issue I brought up, which is fine. I don't care. I'm happy to push
Not
that
governance,
way.
but
But someone comes up then town hall wise or in any future approach in a meeting and says, I want to deal with what's not working in the county. That does sound more governance related, depending on what they say. So there's a role here for a gatekeeper, and I don't want to do that myself, but somebody, I don't know, maybe the co-chair from the town hall fallout to give some thought to where each individual person's points go, instead of us scrumming over those crumbs for who gets to cover that. I think that's going to be important. And the town hall could be a 2-3 person wonder. I hope it's well attended, and I hope there's a lot of content.
I mean, Kyle, I could see us producing a document regarding this third thing, putting aside the first two things that we talked about. I can see us producing a document, but we can't wait too long to do this, that says it is our perception that the public here in this county is not concerned with this and this because things are doing well, but they do appear to be concerned about these areas because things have just fallen apart, or what the government is doing is not working for them. And then take that and present it to the commission, and the commission can hash out who gets what, who deals with what as a regard. I mean, in that regard, but they may already be handling all of these things. Yeah, Patty.
I was just going to say, so you're really saying that we need to make this, God, I'm sorry, I'm losing my alphabet, or my language. It's like, okay, the commission is already going to be doing that because they'll be going to the town halls. We will be hearing from everybody. Do we really need to explicitly state these things? Is that part of the reason we exist, to tell everybody else what needs to be done?
Well, really, to be honest, I'm just going by
I know
what assignments we have been given.
Yeah, I know.
And that is an important one. And Kyle even wrote the thing up, or they wrote it up about what he was concerned with. And I think the rest of us are concerned with. And, we don't, maybe it's as easy as we all attend the town halls. We ask questions of the people, trying to draw that out. We get as many answers as we can. And this committee gets together and just writes up what our conclusions were regarding the town halls. Not everybody, not all 18 people on the commission probably are going to attend those town halls, right? And we can at least say, and then we can noodle about, are there other ways for us to get this information? Do we want to put an ad in all 3 newspapers saying, what's working, what's not working? Please, send an email to this address, and then take all of those things and look at them. Do we want to do something like that? Do we want to, some kind of public outreach beyond the town halls? Yeah, Liz.
I want to loop back to Kyle, your point about having a gatekeeper, whether it's the vice chair or whoever it is. I think that's an excellent idea. And is it your intent to bring that up at the full commission meeting? I would definitely second that motion, that somebody is listening to that and then saying, this goes here, this goes there.
Should be the
Or
chairman.
there's a process. I don't want the public comments to just evaporate. I want to make sure that they get delegated to the right subcommittee and that they get incorporated in the discussion.
Liz, that's what I was talking about. Maybe if as many of us as possible can attend those 2 things, which are before our next meeting, maybe at our next meeting, we can make sure that we have a list of each one of those things. And I, as the chairman, will create a memo and send it to Kevin and say, okay, it's our responsibility to let you know these things, and here they are. If that's all that we want to do, if we want to make some other kind of outreach, please think about that. We're running out of time here. Yeah, Bill.
Well, we don't know what process means, but we get the right to interpret it.
Yeah,
and
we do.
Because nobody else knows either. So we're ahead. And besides, we own the word. I think each of us should consider emailing Kevin I don't mean necessarily all 5 of us doing the same thing, but when things come to our attention, I think we ought to say, I think this is a serious issue. Here's why. And would you please assign this issue to the appropriate committee? That way we don't spend council time wrapping around the pole about it. It's simpler. I think Kyle's points are well stated. I want to get mine out. I don't want to have to go through a lot of formality with this committee to talk to the CRC, which is going to moil around for a while things get assigned. Let's force Kevin to do some executive functions here.
Yeah. Liz, were you done with what you were talking about? You looked a little frustrated there. Were you done with what you were talking about?
Let me just, if I may, just Bill, ask you a question? So if we did that, what would it look like specifically, please? If we
Well,
forced Kevin's hand to do some
Give us-
executive,
We've discovered some things that are not the subject of this committee.
okay,
But we're on the process committee. These have come up, and our process is going to be that until told otherwise, we're going to give the issues to Kevin, and we'll report. If you would do so, Bob, tomorrow, you're going to report that this is how you're going to treat issues that are out, that we know are outside our ken. We recommend it to other committees too, so that everything gets covered. So we would recommend a process that committees discovering what's outside their jurisdiction, refer the issues to Kevin for assignment to the appropriate committee.
okay.
I got to tell you something that happened to me. We're going to wrap this up because it's after quitting time, but something that happened to me in this regard. In another committee, I wanted to take, I wanted a legal opinion regarding the stuff that I had written about an advocate, and all the powers that the advocate of the environment would have, about whether those were at all legal or just ridiculous. And so I sent a memo to Kevin asking him to ask the attorney. I didn't just send it directly to the attorney. I sent it to Kevin, but that was not, as it turns out, that wasn't good enough. I was supposed to send it through our committee chairman. And I got kind of, put in my place regarding that. And I said, okay, that's good. If that's the process, I'm good with doing it. And Kevin said, yes, that's the process. That's what we need to be doing. So I guess what I need to ask you, although it's not necessarily the way I would want to do it, is that when you find those things and you want to send them to Kevin, that you just run it through me, just because they want it to be that way. I don't care about it. But they want
join the club, Bob. I got it between Randy and Kevin.
Yeah.
They grind fine. Fortunately, Randy is a friend, but I don't want to abuse that. But I will say, I don't want Randy to be surprised, but there's not much I can do about it. So we'll let Kevin do the surprising. We can run everything through Kevin, whether it's good news or bad news. It's his to bear. He's the chair. And so I think each of us should say, if something has come up, it's not in our committee, please assign this to the appropriate committee. One of the appropriate committees to which he might have to assign it is Randy. Let him work that out.
Okay, we're going to wrap this up now because we've run out of time. Let me suggest to you about something about next week, what we want to accomplish at our next meeting. First of all, I think we have arrived at this. We would like to discuss and, if possible, adopt a preamble. Okay, I'm going to make some suggestions, and I hope you all will write some stuff down too, have it ready, and we'll talk about it and try and craft a preamble, possibly for adoption by next week. We also want to address what was Kyle's issue about the undertaking the thorough review thing. And hopefully as many of us as possible can go to the town halls, make notes, and even make inquiries if we're allowed to make inquiries of the public to make sure that we get as much information as we can, and then bring it back to next week's meeting, and we'll just assemble it, put it all together, and then we'll decide whether or not we need to do something further to find out from the public. We may need to, and that may not be enough, but that would be something that I would ask you all to do is to, if you can, attend those meetings and get as much information and bring it back so that we can assemble something to give to the full group. Okay. There is going to be, let's see, Kyle is this right? You're going to talk to when new business comes around on the agenda tomorrow. You're going to talk about the repository for documents. Is that it? And
Bob, who's reaching out to Eric Rishuk?
that was my next question.
Okay.
Is that something that you would like to do, Liz,
Well, Kyle was talking about that. So
Kyle?
I'm happy to do that. I think there's maybe a little bit more sort of pondering of whether she's the right person or not.
Okay.
My proposal was to talk about, how a department head feels like the comprehensive plan is received and conducted and whether or not it has teeth, or to
Yeah.
just generally hear. I don't know if we all want to just hear more about the comp plan. I think that's less benefit of our time. So.
I'm remembering now that a third thing that you guys wanted me to ask everybody in this committee to do was to bring the names of people who you think ought to come and talk to us about how we can, how our government can make the various things happen that we're going to propose. Okay. Yeah, Bill.
Two things. Remember that Lindsay may or may not be able to be with us next week. So we need to have that slot open as a possibility. And there's another thing I'm playing with. And you might, Bob, ask Kevin whether he would inquire of Randy whether we could make the comprehensive plan more binding on the county council. Now remember, the county council ends up adopting the plan. It's the county council's plan ultimately. It's passed by ordinance, and it becomes a law of a sort. Now the question is, can we put teeth in that plan? Do they have the right to vary from it? And I would say only if emergent circumstances arose, something like that. But we can't kid ourselves. The comprehensive plan is not a true public generated document. Just try to get something through the planning commission. It's a real job, but it is a plan, and when it's adopted, and it's particularly when you get to the economy section, if you look at it sometime, you'll notice that it does deal with the rights of nature. It does say that our entire economy rests on nature. And we want that locked in.
Bill, that's an excellent suggestion, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to contact Kevin and ask him if we can make the comp plan mandatory, and if so, I mean, under what circumstances can we do that? Because if we got to that point, as you've observed, there are things in there that might go a long way toward resolving our other questions about the rights of nature, et cetera. Okay, folks, is there anybody else who has something?
Ask one question, Bob.
Yeah, Bill.
That is, I'm asking permission of this group. Can Bob tell Kevin that that is a unanimous request?
Oh, how about it, folks? Bill is asking whether or not everyone agrees that I ought to go ask Kyle to ask Randy if we can make the comprehensive plan mandatory, binding, and under what circumstances, if so.
Yeah.
Everybody,
Wait a minute.
does everybody like that? Everybody willing for that to be
I'm confused with, because what you had said just before that was that you would contact Kevin to see if we can make the comp plan.
I'm sorry, did I say the wrong names?
So I want to put the right names in my.
It is Kevin I would be contacting, and he would be contacting Randy
Okay.
to make the request.
I have another obligation at 12:15, so I'm going to have to jump off. Thank you all.
Okay, bye. Bill, was there some final thing you wanted to say?
No, I was just going to restate what was already.
Well, I saw some hands. Kyle, are you okay with that? I don't think I saw your hand. Okay, so I'll make it the unanimous
if it's
request.
Unanimous.
Yeah.
I think Kevin would be less likely to blow us off.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Good meeting. Everybody has some homework, and we'll see you tomorrow afternoon, I guess, and then next Tuesday, okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Boom. I have to stop the recording.
Yeah. Yeah.
there. I'll figure out how to do that.
Ooh,